Let's just pick up where we left off last week. Okay, as you recall, our series about the development of agriculture tended to view it as a progressive event, or even as a catalyst for everything from art to industry. But I'm going to share a rather different view with you. From a revisionist perspective, the development of agriculture about 10,000 years ago didn't improve the lives of our farmers. On the contrary, when hunter-gatherers abandoned the age-old method of foraging for food and began to cultivate crops, they put their health at risk. Now, I know it's just the opposite of, it's quite a different viewpoint, let's say. So, why would this be so? Why would their health decline when agriculture provided people with an efficient way to get more food for less work? Clearly, cultivated field yield more food per acre than uncultivated land, with undomesticated patches of berries and nuts. Well, first, let's consider the conditions that are necessary for agriculture to flourish. In order to have enough labor to plant, tend, and harvest crops, a large number of people must, well, they have to cooperate. That means that the density of the population must increase in the area surrounding the cultivated farms. And as we know, crowding contributes to the transmission of infectious diseases. So when hunter-gatherers were wandering in small bands, the likelihood of the epidemic was slight. But after the agricultural revolution, tuberculosis and diseases of the intestinal tract, these began to reach epidemic proportions in the crowded agricultural communities. And in addition, because the population was no longer mobile, and relied on trade trade to inject variety into the lives and diets of the farmers. That meant that the disease was also transmitted through the exchange of goods. Now, the revisionists also argue that the content of the uh, diet for our farmers was inferior to that of the hunter-gatherers. You recall that hunter-gatherers enjoyed a variety of foods selected from wild plants and game. And in studies of modern tribes that have continued the tradition of hunting and gathering food, it appears that the hunters and gatherers, they have a better balance of nutrients and even more protein than tribes that have adopted agricultural lifestyle, agricultural cultural lifestyles. Today, three grain crops: wheat, corn, and rice. These account for the bulk of calories consumed by farming societies. So consider the implications. Extrapolating from this and from evidence that our farmers raise only one or two crops. So we can conclude that disproportionate amount of carbohydrate form the basis of their diet. This purpose of our diet. Now, another interesting series of studies involves the skeletal remains of hunter-gatherers. Hunter-gatherers, as compared with their agricultural relatives. Um, and one such study from Greece and Turkey, it indicates that the average height of hunter-gatherers at the end of the Ice Age was, let me check my notes. Yes, it was 5'9" for men and 5'5" for women, and their bones were strong, healthy, and athletic. But after the agricultural revolution, skeletal remains revealed that height had diminished to a shocking 5.3 for men and 5 for women, and evidence for bone samples suggests that they suffered from diseases caused by malnutrition, like amnesia. And this is interesting. Further studies from paleontologists at the University of Massachusetts project life expectancies hunter-gatherers at about 26 years, but post-agricultural life expectancies were less than 20 years. Let me just read you something from one of the studies by George Amarogas. And I quote, episodes of nutritional stress and infectious disease will seriously affect their ability to survive. And he's referring to our farmers here. So let's see where we are. Oh, yes, consider that hunter-gatherers had the advantage of mobility. So if food wasn't plentiful, they broke camp and moved on in search of an area with a larger food supply. And if one type of food were in short supply, for example, well, berries, then they would eat berries, but they would probably be good supplies of another type of food like nuts. Or hunting might compensate for a bad year for plant food. Compensate. Compensate for a bad year for plant foods. But farmers were very vulnerable to crop failures. Remember, most early farmers cultivated only one or two crops. If there was a drought and the grain harvest failed, they didn't have another source, and that's why they were subject to malnutrition or even starvation. So, as you see, revisionists have made a rather convincing case. To sum it up, according to the revisionist, the development of agriculture puts the health of early farmers at risk.